Hey everybody, you're watching, listening, whatever to So Many Sequels. I'm Josh.
Hi, Andrew.
I'm Garrett.
And I'm David.
Oh, I got some laughs out the gate. Today on the show, we are continuing our trek across the stars to where no man has gone before with Star Trek First Contact.
Woo!
We are talking about specifically the Star Trek movies featuring the Next Generation cast. Last time we talked about Generations, which was that bridge movie between the original series and the TNG casts.
Mm-hmm.
And this time we are seeing the TNG crew get their own film in a much more like sci-fi action-packed type of movie than the last one. Where did my information go? Here it is. Star Trek First Contact came out. Oh, it's a little earlier than I thought it did. It came out November 22nd, 1996.
That's right.
Directed by Jonathan Frakes, who plays Commander Riker.
His feature film debut.
Yes, his debut as a director.
He would go on to make Clock Stoppers.
He's a pretty
Great movie. Underrated. Jesse Bradford.
You know, I'm not.
Oscar-nominated.
That's in that Good Burger realm for Garrett.
I've not seen that movie in so long. I wouldn't mind
it's
watching
good.
it again.
It's good.
Did
It's
he-
fun. I
Jonathan
always wanted a
Frakes-
Clock Stopper watch.
He
Plays a
really
janitor
made.
in it.
He really made that.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think it's a Nickelodeon film, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. He directed
directed
two Star Treks, Clock
yeah.
Stoppers, Thunderbirds,
That's right.
and two, looks like TV movies called The Librarian. And then, of course, he directed a handful, quite a few actually, TV shows. Episodes of TNG, episodes of Deep Space Nine and Voyager, Roswell, if anybody watched that. He directed some episodes of Castle with Nathan Fillion. That's a fun show.
Oh.
NCIS
You
LA.
never watched
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Shut up.
No. I did.
Oh, here you go. This one's for Garrett. He
Wow.
directed 5 episodes of Burn Notice,
Burn Notice.
Ooh, that's a good one. That's a
Yeah,
one
but
episode of
Donovan-
Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Ooh.
I want to watch that. What episode is it? Does it say?
Of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah.
Episode
Is it like a newer one?
season 1, episode 8.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And then, man, he's directed a lot. 2 episodes of The Orville,
Ah.
Well, that makes sense.
Star Trek Discovery, and Star Trek Picard. So this guy's a big time TV director.
Yeah, he's had a lot of success with that, and he's.
Have y'all, while we're on
I
the
think
topic
Fact or
of
Fiction.
yes, I was just gonna say while we're on the topic of Fact or Fiction or of Jonathan Frakes, I'm sure you all have. Have you all seen the supercut of him asking weird questions?
Yes.
Oh my gosh! Well, I'm gonna have to pull
Okay.
it for Garrett because
And Garrett, did you ever watch Fact or Fiction on TV?
Beyond Belief, Fact or
heard
Fiction?
of it.
Beyond Belief. Fact. So
It's
it's just
kind of
starts.
like
Great show.
what was that other show?
Conspiracy
It's almost like Unsolved Mysteries, but you're presented with different stories, but some of them are not real.
Yeah, you're
Beyond
presented
Belief.
with what I think it's like 3 stories, and any number of them they could all be true, they could all be false, or 2 could be false, 1 could be true, or 2 could be, any combination of the things, right? And a lot of them are like urban myths that you've probably heard, and and then they're dramatized, so there's kind of almost a Twilight or like a Tales from the Crypt element of they're like he'll come on and go. Have you ever had trouble reading the newspaper?
It's really
That's the
funny.
kind of problem that
We'll watch
somebody
it after
found
this
out
because it
this
is.
week.
It's
and
like he's
then,
it's like a drunk guy.
Yeah, and then he'll
Oh.
set up the thing to go. That's what our young friend Jennifer will be trying to find out this week. And then they'll play the episode, and then it'll come to an end, and then he'll introduce another one. He'll introduce that next, and then he'll go. Did you buy our tale about a woman that found an old urn in her house that was secretly a ghost? Sorry, we made it up. Like it's basically a really fun. It's probably a show that's more fun when you're young, drunk, or high. Some facet of not a complete adult.
Yeah.
But I thoroughly enjoyed it as a kid. I used to watch
Yeah.
it and Ripley's Believe It or Not all the time.
Well, let's be clear. None of us are real adults at this age.
Oh
anyway.
no, there's no such thing as a real adult.
No.
Looks like he also did some.
Patrick Stewart is a real adult.
Okay, well, he might be the only one. He did some episodes of Gargoyles too. He was the voice of a character. So
He's the voice of Xanatos.
But this did not. I did not intend for this to become a Jonathan Frakes Power Hour. Though always deserved. So in Star Trek First Contact, this is particularly good for fans of the show because it dives a little deeper into Picard's relationship with the Borg, having been assimilated himself during the television show in two of the best episodes ever made, really, of that series and in all of Star Trek. The Borg have figured out a way to go back in time and assimilate the entirety of Earth before they were able to make first contact with another alien species, thus kickstarting their revolution and the creation of the Federation and all that stuff. Yeah. So, they were able to assimilate the entire human race before they had the ability to fight back. And so now it is up to Picard and the crew of the Enterprise E making its first appearance on film.
Super sweet, sexy Enterprise.
Yes, it's very cool. It's up to them to single-handedly save the entire human race because they were fortunate enough to get trapped in a temporal wake and not be affected by the changes in the past.
It's a very Star Trek-y thing. We're in some sort of temporal wake.
There's always an explanation. Okay, so again, this is going to be another situation where everyone but Garrett has seen this movie before. So, this time, I'm going to start with Andrew. I want to hear Andrew's thoughts on this movie.
I loved it.
Did you love it the first time, this time, both times?
Yeah, I feel like this one, I want to say that of the Next Generation movies, this is probably the best one.
Probably.
And
it's definitely.
It's definitely the best one. It has the best story. It's very tightly put together. And everybody has everybody's role in this movie kind of plays it in. It kind of ties together with it. I mean, we were talking about last time when there were characters in Generations that were there, and that's really just it. The characters here actually do have a purpose. Like there's a reason. I can't think of a character that was like out of place at all. So
yeah, I agree with that. They're much better. They're much better used than they were in the last one.
I will say, I will say that it's much better motivated. I feel like everything here is very well motivated.
Right.
And seeing that personal conflict again with Picard, trying to overcome the Borg, and that dynamic of Data and Picard is always going to be there. But it's just it's nice having that dynamic where you explore more about them, and you find out literally. I like how it ties into one of the Borg episodes, and they make it about the Borg because I remember the Borg being like a primitive plot point in the series, but I'm happy that they actually did this. So there's like a central form of leadership to the Borg. They're not just operating like a virus.
You're always big on this kind of stuff, Andrew. What do you think of like the cinematography, the production design here?
Because it's much different than the last movie.
The production value I thought was great.
Mm-hmm.
And the cinematography. I will say that first shot where it comes out of Picard's eye, and we do that. It's like, I don't know, like a 1 minute take of them in the Borg hive.
Mm-hmm.
I remember watching that and thinking, like, man, that blows me away. Like, I never realized that was just one take. So that's something that blew me away. I felt the cinematography was pretty good. Like, you can definitely tell when things go wrong. Everything gets moody, and you can really tell it. That's all I got to say about that.
Okay, that's fine.
Did anybody notice Adam Scott?
Yes, we were definitely going to bring that up because Garrett noticed it. Adam Scott. I had
Nikki
never
noticed
noticed
it right
in
away.
that. It was very brief.
Yeah.
And he was so like hidden in shadows and explosions that he barely you'd miss him if you weren't looking.
Yeah.
And Nikki got it right away, like from the voice. She was like, it sounded like Adam Scott. And then we got like a little bit more of a look and we were like, yeah, that's Adam Scott. And he gets one of the cooler lines of the movie because like this is on Worf's ship, the Defiant. It's all like wrecking and stuff. And he's like, sir, there's a new ship coming in. It's the Enterprise. It's like a very hero moment.
But really what he does is feed Worf one of the greater lines that perhaps today is a good day to die. All right, let's shift gears now and listen and hear from Garrett, who has never seen this movie before. Yeah, what did you think of the movie? I already know a little bit because I was here.
This movie gets a 0-star rating from me only because it opened up with the nail going directly into Picard's eye. I genuinely hate anything eye related. I can't stand it. I don't like it. And they hovered on that for a very long time. And normally in these kinds of situations, I know when they're going to cut away, and they went beyond when I thought they were going to cut away, and I struggled. So 0 stars right out the gate. Don't appreciate it. Don't like it.
Yeah. What about when the little thing pops out of his cheek?
I don't remember that. I was probably hiding.
Right after that.
That probably closed my eyes. I don't want to see things going into people's eyes. I don't like it.
The movie starts with a dream within a dream moment because he has that, and then he wakes up and he goes and looks in the mirror, and then he's like, "What's this on my face?" Thing bursts out of his cheek, and then he wakes up again.
I must have been this way at that point in time.
The eye
Did it improve from
it.
there? Did it improve from there, Garrett?
I thought this movie was better than the last one. I think for me, not having seen the series, there was a lot of disconnect between me and the characters. It really stood out when Josh reacted when Worf looked at Picard and was like, "If you were any other man, I'd kill you." And he went, "Ooh," and I went, "Okay."
Yeah, I was like,
I
"Oh my god!"
had zero reaction to that.
You literally said, "I'm so bored right now."
Yeah.
Which I guess which would make sense. You don't understand their relationship.
No, I don't have the background that these movies set up, and I think that is I don't want to say a problem because the movie was good. Mm-hmm. I didn't really feel a real sense of urgency until about 45 minutes left. And then I kind of felt like things really get picked up. The first, honestly, if you want me to be honest with you, the real sense of passion, like any kind of sense of urgency or passion, in my opinion, came when Alfred Woodard and Picard, I don't remember, Lily and Picard were having that discussion about vengeance and Moby Dick. That was the first moment, in my opinion, when any kind of emotion and urgency was given. And then from there, it really picked up for me. I was really invested at that point in time. But throughout the rest of it, while I thought it was good, I thought that most people were just going through the motions. I didn't really get a sense of much else. I did not find the Borg intimidating at all. I liked the fact that they were able to adapt. And so you'd see them get blown up by some phasers, and then they'd shoot him again. And Worf, it was normally Worf, I think, he would shout, "They've adapted." And I thought that was a really cool element, but I don't think it really shined as much to give them any kind of fear. I did not fear them. I thought the Queen was pretty good, but overall, I just was watching it.
Yeah.
All right.
I think those are fair critiques.
Yeah.
There is a lot that is missing just from not having a built up like the viewer relationship with the characters.
And I think that this, like, you see, again, a lot of movies that are based on TV, you can look at the modern day Star Trek. They're based on the original series, and odds are that the younger people have not seen those original series, but they have those times, or like that first movie is a time for them to develop those. And then for people like me who are watching these movies, you had Generations, where you guys said that most of the next gen cast didn't get a chance to do much of anything. And then you go into this movie where I think a detriment of it is the fact that they are relying on that this is a movie for people who have seen the series, because you have that background. And movie 1, movie 2, there really is no character development. So I don't know the connection other than they're all on the ship. I know they're all on the ship. I know they all work together. I know there's some kind of relationship, but I don't get a chance for those relationships to develop because they've already been developed through 7 years of a show. Mm-hmm. And I think I understand that for fans of the show and for people who have seen it. And again, as much as I do like Star Trek, I haven't seen the show. So I have no real sense of what the emotional connection is for any of these people. And that really loses some of that in this movie.
We got to figure out where to get you the best entrance to Star Trek for you, because you're on the good path of you enjoy it, but it sounds like you haven't found it yet.
No, I'm watching the original series right now, and I've been watching the original series for several years.
That's your mistake.
But I usually just watch 3, 4, and then several months go by, and it's like, I'll turn on 3, 4 more. So it's not really hit me. Again, it's enjoyable, but it's not like a gripping, wonderful sensation. It's more of this is a fun thing to watch for a few episodes, and then I'll take a few months off and come back to it.
A series, and we've discussed this problem before, Garrett and I, on our much acclaimed podcast, 6 Seasons in a Movie, where we talk about TV shows getting their own films. And that was one of the things we often discussed was fan appeasing versus general appeal. Yeah. With the reboot series of Star Trek, they were really able to get away with taking characters that you knew and telling different stories with them, reintroducing you to the characters because now things are changed, and they give themselves sort of an in-universe reason for why things aren't the same way that they were the first time. So the fans can't complain as much because they go, well, they still act like themselves, but obviously things are different now. So they're reacting to new circumstances. So I can't blame them for being different. But new fans, as far as they're concerned, this is how they've always been. With this, there is a lot of leaning on the show in terms of characters, relationships, and even some of their past events. But I kind of feel like, in general, they don't tug on that stuff too much. It's all very tiny to me as a fan. I feel like, with Worf's relationship, with Data's relationship, you have that a bit. But I feel like they do a fairly good job of just setting up at the beginning, hey, here's a flashback of Picard in the collective, and then, boom, we're right into the story. They do a little thing where they come on, they say, Picard, we're not bringing the Enterprise because we're afraid that you will be compromised by fighting. And so that gives you like a little bit of a delay, but like they don't like waste a whole lot of time. It's not like 35 minutes into the movie, the Borg are here. Right. You get a little bit of action and then things cool off because they think that the Borg are gone. And then they ramp back up when they realize they're not. And so it's I think it did a good job of sort of balancing being too much fan appeal and being a little bit more general, because they probably could have, if they wanted to, really dove a lot deeper into some of those character dynamics. But they kind of keep it fairly surface. And a line as simple as like the argument between Worf and Picard is simple enough for a fan like Josh or I or Andrew to go, yeah, I know what these guys have been through, and that was really harsh for Picard to call him a coward, because casually we know what that means. That's like one of the worst things you could say to a Klingon in general. But for Picard to say it to Worf, it has an extra cut if you know that relationship. But I think even casually, most people could appreciate someone who clearly is a very large, intimidating man being called a coward for wanting to save lives as opposed to stay and fight is a pretty harsh thing to do. That said, I guess I'll get into my thing a little bit here. I think
before you do, I just want to piggyback off of something you said. As far as like the entrance to Picard. So I got from that entrance and that background that he had been take in. And you know, Josh kind of gave me a little bit of a background real quick of here's what the Borg do, here's how they operate. But I would have liked to have seen more, realistically, as a non-fan, because you got like 2 minutes of that at the beginning, and I don't really see or know the full struggle that Picard went through.
Mm-hmm.
And so that whole thing, while I understand it's there, again, I have no emotional connection to that.
Right.
And they just kind of glossed over it, and they went, okay. And then again, that's why whenever he had that interaction with Lily in his quarters, that's whenever I went, now I fully understand. Now I get it. I really see the struggle that he's going through. But for me, it came across as this was a thing that happened. It wasn't that big of a deal. Whatever. That's how he was playing it. And I understand that's how he was playing it. But again, not having that background, it didn't seem like he cared at all. And they never really gave me that sense until that moment. And then I was, okay, now I get it.
I think to a certain extent, that's the character's goal, is to make you think he doesn't care about it. Like the character's trying to brush this off as I'm fine. There's nothing wrong with me. I don't have any residual feelings about this. I'm not going to freak out. I'm not going to join them. I'm fine. Yeah. And they let you see little tiny cracks of him doing things and saying things that should lead you to, that are foreshadowing his true intent. Him saying, if you run across somebody, you are going to see your fellow crewmates and they are going to be taken. Do not hesitate. They're gone. Kill them. And him killing one of his own officers who's laying there on the ground, still fairly conscious, and asking for help, and he shoots him. And then him just straight up gunning down Borg on the holodeck. You know, they're letting you into like his actual feelings, even though he continues to put forward, I'm fine. No, I'm good. You know, just listen to me. I'm good. I'm the only one who knows how to handle these things.
Right. And I understand that, but you and I are also looking at it from two different perspectives. Whereas you've seen the show and I haven't. So you already go into this movie with that background knowledge, whereas I don't.
It's so hard to check that, you know what I mean, at the door. It's really hard to do.
Yeah. And for sure.
It's, and I kind of wish that I could look at a movie like this with new eyes. I guess that's how I felt during the Cloverfield stuff, is that I'd never seen it. So I'm coming in with a new perspective. And I really wish that, like, because I would love to be able to, like, I would love for this stuff to be new to me. But it's as far as I'm concerned, it's a natural evolution of the show. If you ever get a chance to really watch The Next Generation and kind of watch, at least, if not all of it, enough of it that you kind of get the full breadth of these stories, this show is, and it's kind of funny because I was looking at the stuff that they had, the first ideas they had for this movie. I'm so glad they kept pushing till they got to this, because this feels like so much more natural than some of the other ideas they were kicking around. Like Andrew said, most of the cast gets a chance to do stuff. Riker and Geordi and Troy and Dr. Crusher, they're all doing their best to try to get this Crusher's on the ship, but they're doing their best to get this pivotal moment in human history off the ground. And they're dealing with a guy where they get down there and they find out that the guy that everybody thinks of as a hero by the future standards isn't so much of a hero in the, when he was starting out. And so you get a lot of, that's the very cool, calm B story going on, which is a very Trek thing, is to have a B story that's not quite as heavy as your A story. And I like it. It allows us some breather moments between what's going on the ship, where you have a more intense, kind of more thriller sci-fi thing going on. And I think the Borg here come across a lot scarier than they do on the show. On the show, they're scary for the philosophical reason. The production design was never quite all the way there to make them totally intimidating. The idea being, and I'm sure Josh explained this to you, that the Borg don't really care about identity. They don't care about culture or anything like that. Their goal is to assimilate everybody's culture into their own until they become the one, quote unquote, perfect dominant race. But they're absent any sort of they're not like taking people's culture and like adding it to their own in like a way that makes them more unique, they're like stripping it down to like, we know now we know all the knowledge you ever gained, and we know everything you'll ever have, and we've brought it into our collective, and then you're done. All your people are gone, your entire civilization gone. And that's a scary idea, especially in the Trek universe, where personal identity and culture is highly valued, to the point that like the Federation is made up of a large group of alien races who all have very different cultures and ideals and ideologies, but they all respect each other, and they all allow that to be, the Klingons can continue to operate as they always have, and humans operate as they have. You don't have that. The Borg is not interested in that. They're not interested in diplomacy. They're not interested in peace treaties. It's scary on the philosophical side of things. I think they did a lot more here to make them a little bit more intimidating. The production value is way up. The Borg Queen is genuinely pretty creepy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she is.
Yep.
And played by Alice Krieg, and Jonathan Frakes described her as sexy and scary at the same time, which I think is good. I think it's about what you want. The stories feel better. I think Data Data's been experimenting with emotions since the last movie, but now he's coming across something that he's never really had, which is like temptation, which is not really like a experience that they ever really messed around with on the show. And then, man, Captain Picard going all out with the line must be drawn here at the end, and really digging in and then reciting some Moby Dick. It's the main reason you get a guy like Patrick Stewart. He's just a killer actor. I want to also compliment. You talked a little bit about her. I want to compliment Alfre Woodard, because she's always great, and she wasn't playing an over-the-top character here, but she was playing a very natural character to kind of be the juxtaposition to Picard and kind of like check him on saying things like, we don't, we're an advanced society. We don't act the way you do anymore. And her being able to kind of check him and say, yeah, from where I'm standing, you kind of still do. And then I'm sorry. I'm blanking on his name now.
Pig Farmer from Babe.
Yeah, he was in Babe.
James
He was
Cromwell.
James Cromwell, exactly.
Yes.
So he's great. I want to, Josh, you might have this detail somewhere too, but he was almost played by another much more famous actor, and that character that is. But James Cromwell has a certain, like, he's always solid. Like, I've never seen him be bad in anything. He's always exactly what you need, and playing a sort of drunk is something that he gets well here. And he actually reprised his role on the show Star Trek Enterprise, which is one of the shows that came out after this movie.
Yeah, he does portray why did I just forget his name? What's his name? Zephyr?
Zephyr Cochrane.
Zephyr Cochrane, yes, in Enterprise, which is fun. He gets his own nice little storyline of grappling with being a future hero and this icon that's looked up to when he does not feel like one nor act like one.
No, and I'm trying to think about someone else who would be in a similar situation. I guess it would be like, I don't know, finding like 18-year-old Neil Armstrong or something, and trying to convince him that like he's one of the most famous people in history, but trying to do that in 1960,
like Steve Jobs.
Yeah,
Steve Jobs might believe it.
Yeah.
That was very much his goal.
I think the production design, the visual effects step it up tremendously. I mean, the visual effects I think hold up really well today.
They do look really good
because
Chip looked fantastic.
The iconic, the kind of standout shot in this is the Borg Queen being lowered down into her suit. And she's just like a pair of shoulders and a spine and a head. Like, by today's standard, that's a pretty standard shot. You see that in a lot. You see stuff like that where you're cutting out somebody's lower half all the time. In 1996, that shot took 5 months of long, laborious work to get worked out, and I think it looks great even today. So I'd say, aside from some hokey lines like "assimilate this," you know,
I love that line.
things
You
are.
would.
I
of
think
course
it's.
you do.
I think it's a practically perfect movie from a fan's perspective.
Yeah, it does look really good visually. I think it's some of those visual effects are honestly kind of surprising for 1996, because Star Trek is not like one of your bigger, like, huge budget sci-fi franchises for film.
No.
So it's not like they just threw unlimited money at this.
No, they gave this
But it's
45
got
million.
it's got that nice mix of practical and computer generated effects that make especially like the battle scenes look really cool, because you can tell that those are real explosions that are worked into it. So
Yeah.
I like those parts of it. And we got a cool spacewalk scene that
Yeah.
I thought that looked really neat.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of what other like big like visual effect scenes there were.
Really, the end.
Really, if I had to pick one that didn't look great, sorry, it just looked kind of goofy when Data does that huge jump down that tunnel, and he's just like frozen, like he just falls.
Yeah.
It did not look great, but that's like one of my few visual complaints.
Yeah. What I was going to say was that when in the end when Data knocks out like part of that cooling system for the power,
Oh yeah.
and
Face.
everything literally melts away.
Yeah, all the organic components get melted. That lady, Borg Queen's face just.
I do want to give props to the makeup crew.
Yeah.
Because like the makeup crew was nominated for an Oscar for this, and you can definitely tell they put in the work. Because like one of the freakiest things I remember about this movie growing up was they were doing some like montage shots of like the Borg getting their collective of like
getting like
crew.
stuff drilled into their faces and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and like they're putting all the Borg stuff on, and one of the things I remember was like one of the crew members had like a normal eye, and then they panned over, and part of his eye was like artificial, and it was like sticking out.
Yeah.
I always wondered like how did they do that? Like that's nuts.
Eyeball gone.
And then that question never got answered, but like it just stuff like that just really sticks out. And the like. There's one thing I will say, just the makeup was just amazing. It was absolutely amazing.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, the Borg Queen is mostly just makeup and a cat suit. Like, today
Pretty much.
They do that. They do like that whole character probably like as a digital character with motion capture.
Yeah.
But I mean, makeup and hair and makeup are truly underrated, I think, by today's standards. And sometimes even when it is hair and makeup, people just assume it's CGI.
Yeah.
But it goes a long way with her. They did a good job with Data, as they usually do, and this time he has like human skin grafted over part of him, so it's like half human Data, half artificial Data.
Yeah.
And then we got a lot of great cameos in this movie too, as we talked about. We got Adam Scott.
Yes.
And, I say cameo. This is more of like he was just young at the time. Neil McDonough. Who's a terrific actor.
And same for Adam Scott. He was just young at the time.
Very young at the time. This was around the time he was playing Griff on Boy Meets World. And then we got two Star Trek Voyager cameos. We got a cameo from Robert Picardo as the Doctor, the EMH.
Love that.
And then
I paused the movie to explain that. The significance of the EMH program.
Yeah, and then we get the actor who plays Neelix is the Mater D during the holodeck sequence, which was also very neat. He's also on Star Trek Voyager. Other than that, I'm trying to think. I think there was one other that was like of interest, but I can't remember what it was now. Josh, are you aware, and Andrew, are you aware of who almost played Zephram Cochrane?
I don't think I do know that, no.
No. Go ahead.
We'll see.
So this might have made for a very different movie, but the role was originally offered to longtime Star Trek fan Tom Hanks.
No.
Yes.
Man, that would have been cool. If it were Tom Hanks, he would have had, I think, an even more significant role. mean, because Ephraim's in there quite a bit, but Tom Hanks.
Yeah, I mean that's
peak Tom Hanks time.
Tom Hanks,
in '96. Tom Hanks. Unfortunately, he couldn't do it because he had a prior commitment with That Thing You Do.
Oh, what a bummer!
I know, right? Just think about how different it would have been. Like they could have marketed Tom Hanks as in this, but when ultimately that didn't work out, Jonathan Frakes said, "I was glad we were able to get James Cromwell because he's a very underrated actor, and he was afraid that Tom Hanks's fame would have outshone the character. People would have not been able to really like believe that like it was a different character. They wouldn't be able to see past the Tom Hanks, the George Clooney effect."
Yeah, maybe.
But I thought that was a very interesting near casting choice.
I wish that it had happened. I really do.
That's crazy.
James Cromwell brings a lot to the role, and he's very good in it. But Tom Hanks, I feel like even James would have been like, "Yeah, Tom can have it."
Yeah.
Well, like that's such a huge contrast. Like,
yeah, he's very different. He has a very different style.
Yeah, Tom Hanks is Tom Hanks, and James Cromwell is like almost a character actor who is lucky enough to get lead roles.
Mm-hmm.
I was 100% prepared for you to say Tom Hanks is Tom Hanks and James Cromwell is James Cromwell. I mean, obviously.
And then just like look at us like, am I right?
Yeah. I think I pretty much hit the nail on the head.
Yeah. Just like The Dark Knight.
And Ace Ventura.
One element of this movie that I thought could have been neat was, and I went back and forth on whether or not I thought this was the tactic, was throughout the movie, Picard would hear the voices of the Borg. Never really like understood what they were saying, but he had that sense.
He could hear them whispering.
Yeah, he could hear the whispers. And part of me was going back and forth on whether or not this was something the Borg knew would happen to somebody who had previously been able to escape their clutches.
Mm-hmm.
And if they were, was she manipulating the situation? And it turns out nothing of that ever panned out and turned into anything other than the fact that he could hear them. And I think that was a missed element. I think that could have been an added something where she's either just messing with them or they don't know that he can hear them and he figures it out and use it to their advantage, which he did use it to his advantage from, the couple of times. But I think that was an element that was just kind of put in there, and then it could have been more. I don't have a problem with it. I think that there was just more they could have gotten from it in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, they definitely could have used that a little bit more to sort of highlight Picard's, for lack of a better word, either post-traumatic stress from the situation, or even just the long-term ramifications of being assimilated by the Borg. Prior to Picard, for Laura, for the sake of lore, prior to Picard, supposedly no one had ever been taken out of the Borg, unassimilated as it is. But because of the success that Data and I think Geordi and a little bit Counselor Troy were able to achieve during the show, that practice was tried multiple times again, and to varying rates of success. A character on Star Trek Voyager 7 of 9 is a former Borg that's been sort of unassimilated. And so she kind of gets to explore some of those ideas a little bit more, because I think at the time they were writing TNG, I don't think they had they thought about that too much. You have several episodes that revisit Picard's experience, but not with as grand, not on as grand a level as First Contact or even what they did with 7 of 9. But that plays all the way into today's Star Trek Picard, where you see that the practice of pulling people out of the collective, or pulling people out of the collective is now like a common practice. They do it all the time, and it's the people are never quite the same, and they all still feel like they feel like, I think the way that's described is it feels like having your hand cut off, almost.
Yeah.
Because you in a very short amount of time, you basically can hear everyone talking at the same time, but it all makes sense. I don't know. It definitely is something they could have explored more. And it's unfortunate they didn't. It's probably just, it could be one of those things that just they didn't have time for, or they worried that it was going to bore the audience maybe.
I don't have much else to say.
We'll talk. No, I don't really either. I mean, I don't either. I like the movie.
Yeah, I do too. I really
We
enjoy
talked
it.
about all the things I like about it. It's got good action. It's got good humor. It has a time travel scenario that makes a lot more sense than the last movies did.
Yes.
Let me express. Well, go ahead, Josh.
I was just gonna say that I think that they also handled Data better, because he kind of continues the same route he was on in Generations, with his attempts to be more human, and this time he is like gifted the chance to be even more human in a way that only the Borg could provide, and it really tests him, as we see, and so that makes that story even more interesting. So I think they improve on a lot of things that weren't done quite right in Generations, simply because it was just too much to juggle.
They could focus more on the actual story, I think, than trying to come up with a cool way to have this particular moment. They were able to focus on like that story itself.
Yep.
And it's funny because like Data, and they don't tackle this too much on the show, but Data presents a real challenge for the Borg, being the only, as far as anybody knows, truly artificial life form in the galaxy. The Borg, mostly their whole lives, have just assimilated organic life forms. Data being the opposite. It's like they had to work from the other way around. They were like, okay, well, we can't give him artificial enhancements because he's already got them all. We have to give him organic enhancements. It's a challenge for them in a different way. I don't have much else to say. I do want to run through some alternate story ideas they had and some alternate titles. So apparently the two writers both came up with two different ideas. They went away to themselves and they came back to each other to pitch their ideas to each other, and then come up with the thing. One had the idea of doing stuff with the Borg. Or I think actually they both had the idea of doing stuff with the Borg. One of them wanted to go back in time to the 1500s of Earth. The Borg were going to invade the Renaissance, and they were going to have a duel in a castle, is where they were going to be held up. Huh. There was going to be lots of sword fighting and phasers, and it would have been very Star Trek, but also the wrong kind of Star Trek for most people, I think.
Yeah, that sounds dumb.
Sounds more like Doctor Who.
It does sound more like Doctor Who.
They ditched that because it was too campy, but they liked the time travel element, and that was where the other guy came in. He wanted to do something with Data being taken by the Borg and assimilated, much like Picard did, and Picard has to overcome his PTSD to save Data. They combined that with the idea of going not all the way to the Renaissance, but instead going to a pivotal moment in Star Trek history, not necessarily real history. We get to, I think they really brought together the best of both worlds in that scenario. A time travel story with also a very personal story for the characters. Some alternate titles were Star Trek Borg.
Dumb.
Pretty not great.
Very plain.
Star Trek Destinies. This has got to be one of the weaker ones. Star Trek Future Generations.
No.
This is the worst. I'm just going to tell you right now. This is the worst. Star Trek Generations 2.
Oh, no.
Why would you do that?
Generations 2 Electric Boogaloo?
Now the title they went with for the longest time, the script said, the script read Star Trek Resurrection. And they were good with that until 20th Century Fox announced their film Alien Resurrection. At which point they had to go, well, back to the drawing board. And then they came up with First Contact, which I actually think is best of all the things that were suggested there.
I would agree with that.
Because First Contact's kind of like ambiguous if you don't really like read a lot of I think sci-fi stories. You're like First Contact. What does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. Anyway, that's all I got to
right.
say. I wanted to read some little fun facts.
Cool.
My mic's too low.
My last fun fact is that this movie was nominated at the Academy Awards for Best Makeup, but lost to The Nutty Professor.
Oh, brother.
Oh.
Man.
Rick
96.
Baker.
96.
Rick Baker.
We're going to have to do a rundown of the 96 Oscars because, like, the 96 Oscars were very confusing.
Well, I said what? But I'm gonna defend the Nutty Professor here for a second. In that Eddie Murphy did play all those characters, and he had to be made up to play all of those characters.
Yeah.
So
right.
and the makeup did look good, and he
Yeah.
did look good as all of those different characters. It wasn't
True.
CG; it was actual makeup. So I retract my I give it a.
What it boils down to is it's Rick Baker.
Yeah.
The Academy loves Rick Baker. So he's literally the king of makeup.
That's for true.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
but if I just want to read, there's two things I found very interesting. I was going through some trivia. Is you don't see Guinan in this.
No.
And Guinan in the show apparently has like a huge role with the Borg.
Yeah.
For some reason.
Yeah, her people were assimilated by the Borg, but not all of them.
And Whoopi Goldberg says she wasn't asked to come back. And
rude.
Yeah, and she basically said that I wanted to do it, but I didn't think you could do anything about the Borg without my character, but apparently you can, so they don't need me.
Yeah, Whoopi Goldberg seems like the person I don't think you want to piss off Whoopi Goldberg.
No,
she's scary.
Agreed.
But the other thing I noticed that I liked, which was a nice surprise, was Geordi's
He's got
He's got ocular implants instead of
the
iconic visor. The visor is, that's what people knew.
Yeah, well, like he reportedly hated the visor.
Oh yeah.
Because why
wouldn't he?
Say what?
Why wouldn't he? There's no way that could be comfortable.
Well,
there's no way he could actually. All them lines.
Yeah, how could he really see through it?
Yeah, that was one reason, but the other reason was that acting is all in the eyes, and if you can't see your eyes, you can't tell the character's emotion. And he was asking the writers, he's like, I don't care what you do, please don't let me wear that visor anymore.
And the funny thing is, it's iconic. People recognize Geordi based on that visor.
Yeah.
But yeah, he talks about how it was personally ironic because he was playing a character who couldn't see, but had this ability, this special thing that allowed the character to see. Unfortunately, it allowed the actor to not be able to see because he couldn't see his marks. He couldn't look his fellow actors in the face to react to their reactions. It was very difficult. It works out story-wise because in almost every episode where they have like a shot of the future or a flash forward or somebody travels to the future for some reason, Geordi almost always has had implants by that point. So they could always just go, this is the point where he got implants. We always said it was going to happen in the show, and here it is. It's interesting. It is interesting to me that they don't take a moment to explain that. Like Geordi doesn't explain his eyes to Zefram Cochrane, somebody who wouldn't know or something like that. You have an excuse. Here's a character who doesn't know, so you have an excuse to do it. But it's my wife, when we were watching it, she went, "Whoa, what is going on? Those are LeVar Burton's eyes." She was very surprised to see Geordi's eyes in this. And I was like, that's not at all. Dr. Crusher's blonde. I said, one of those has a backstory, one doesn't. Uh-oh. Okay. I thought you guys were froze for a sec.
Nope.
Everybody was very still. And
we were
for a moment too still. And I was like, oh no. Yeah. Oh, the only other thing, Josh and maybe Andrew, you'll both recognize this. We also got a cameo from Lieutenant Barclay. Lieutenant Barclay I was telling my wife, he's a character on the show. He may be in 6 or 7 episodes of the show. and he appears in a few of the other, like the Star Trek Voyager and Deep Space Nine. He's a character, Garrett, that I think you'd be really interested in, because Star Trek is often sort of poked fun at because of how perfect all the characters kind of are. They're all like, they always make the moral right decisions, and they're always just so right and so righteous and all this. Barclay's like a really regular dude. Like, Barclay is the Andrew Nichols of the Enterprise.
Oh, I hate that character.
Actually, maybe not. Maybe he's actually Garrett. He might actually be Garrett.
That character.
He might be the Garrett Powders of it, because he's super anxious. He doesn't do well with people. He's terrified of actually doing anything, but he's managed to rise through the ranks because he's just good enough at his job to keep rising up. So he's to the point where, like, it's so funny because for, like, when they first introduce him, all the characters hate having to deal with him because they're like, Barclay, and he's always going to ask me 1,000 questions.
I'm the inverse. People like me at first, and then it's like, nah, never mind.
Yeah, the more they get used to things, boy. So it was very nice to see a cameo by him.
Nice.
Cool. All right. Well, let's move toward the end of this, shall we?
Yes. So this is the box office stats. We're going to run through the numbers here a little bit. Star Trek First Contact debuted, as Josh said, back in November, on the weekend of November 22nd in 1996. It finished number one that weekend with a haul of $30.7 million. Which is not bad for a sort of Thanksgiving-ish weekend. At number two, this is a great list of movies here. At number two that weekend, in its second week, you had Space Jam, bringing in $16.2 million. It's Studio Dance. Space Jam. It's fixing a divot. Number three is a movie called Ransom, brought in $13 million in its third week. And number four, we talked about this movie last December. It's Jingle All the Way.
Oh boy.
He's got two.
They're all gone.
It actually debuted that weekend to $12.1 million. And then at number five, it's The Mirror Has Two Faces in its second week.
Don't say that. Like, literally the only one that knows what that is. The Mirror Has Two Faces. Oh, shut up.
It's only one sequel in the top five that weekend. In fact, only one sequel in the top 10 altogether. And if we look at the full box office numbers, Star Trek First Contact finished with $92 million in the United States over its 17-week run. It added another $54 million from overseas to bring its worldwide total to $146 million worldwide on just a $45 million budget. They gave it another $10 million from what they gave Generations. If we go, which is, I think that's pretty good. If we go back in time to 1996, this is a year we've been to a couple of times. We have the number one movie of the year. The only movie to make over $300 million that year was Independence Day.
Wow.
At number two, we're making $241 million. It's Twister. At number three, bringing in 180.9, Mission Impossible, the first one. At number four, is that Tom Cruise again? It is Jerry Maguire with 153 million. And then number five, it is Ransom, returning again, $136 million. So no sequels in the top five that year. In fact, you would have to go all the way down to number 17, where you'll find Star Trek First Contact as the highest grossing sequel of 1996.
Oh, those are the days of original content.
Yeah, I mean, here's your top 10 I'll run through real quick again. Independence Day, Twister, Mission Impossible, Jerry Maguire, Ransom, 101 Dalmatians, which is sort of the earliest, perhaps the proto Disney live action remake. At number 7, you have Michael Bay's The Rock.
Yeah.
Number 8, Oscar winner, The Nutty Professor. At number 9, The Birdcage. And at number 10, A Time to Kill. It wasn't a big year. It wasn't necessarily a big year for sequels, but it was a big year for movies that generated sequels. So A lot of other good movies came out that year. And the funny thing is, like, the domestic charts really aren't that different than the worldwide charts that year. Star Trek would finish in the 22nd spot for that, but the top 5 is virtually the same. Mission Impossible just made more than Twister on the worldwide scale. That's about it. Independence Day is your highest grossing non-sequel. I said First Contact was your highest grossing sequel. For the series of, I do want to mention some other honorable mentions. Braveheart was your best picture winner that year. Which I think a lot of people were fine with at the time, weren't they?
Yeah.
People love Braveheart. And runners up that year were Apollo 13, which I think arguably could have also been best picture.
It technically probably should have won.
I think there's an argument definitely could have been made for Apollo 13 to be the winner that year. Also, The Postman, Sense and Sensibility, and are you kidding me? Babe.
People like Babe.
Babe was nominated for Best Picture?
Andrew loves Babe.
I do love Babe.
Of course Andrew loves Babe. Look at him. He is Babe. Andrew, say la, 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 la real quick.
La, 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 la. La 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 la.
Okay. This is going off the rails. I'm pulling the trigger now.
So to wrap up, First Contact
going way too long.
To wrap things up for the box office, First Contact is the 5th highest grossing movie in the Star Trek franchise. It is the highest grossing of the Next Generation films, and that is unadjusted for inflation.
Cool.
Adjusted, it's probably not anymore.
Who's running the game this week? Yeah,
I am.
Oh, David's going to talk some more.
Yay. More David. Letterbox.
JK.
So does somebody want to explain the Letterbox game while I, for any of our new viewers?
Who still doesn't know how this game works? So Letterbox is a film community, social media website for film fans, where you log and review films, create lists, add friends, all that fun stuff. We like to use their ranking system, versus some more popular name brands such as Rotten Tomatoes, etc., because we believe it gives a bit more of an accurate portrayal of what the film community thinks of these movies. So we guess on a 0 to 5 scale where we think it'll land, and then we'll give our own review after that. And you can find our So Many Sequels account on Letterboxd if you're there. And if you're not there, you should be.
All right. I have the number in front of me. So, with 32,000 views and 6.1 thousand likes, guys, what do you think the Letterboxd community gave Star Trek First Contact?
I'm going to go with 3.8.
3.8 from Andrew. Coming in fast and hot.
I'm going to go... I don't think it's higher than that. I really honestly think that's pretty damn close, probably. So I'm gonna go 3.5.
Oh, you bastard!
3.5 from Josh, swiping it from Garrett.
What'd you say, Andrew?
Suppose you could take the same number. We've never made that rule.
We've never really made a rule, but then we'd have to do a tiebreaker.
That's true.
I mean, unless Andrew wins. I don't know. I think that people are going to like it more than me. I don't think it's going to be higher than what Andrew said either. So I'm going to go. I'll go with 3.6.
3.67. 3.7.
Yeah.
All right. Now, for the people at home, I forgot I was running the game this week, so I wrote down a guess, and I guessed right.
Oh.
So I just want that to be on the record.
Prove it.
I have put it on my personal record here that David technically would have won this week had he not been running the game. Unfortunately, we're off to Metacritic because Josh and Garrett tie. It's 3.6.
Oh, God.
So
why do we always get thrown off to Metacritic?
Well, we don't have to go to Metacritic. I have a different option for you. I have a different option for you.
What's the option?
All right. How many people have this as one of are fans of this movie, as in have it in their top?
That's too big.
Oh no, I'm gonna narrow it down for you.
Okay.
The number is between 100 and 120. How many people have this movie in their top 4 on Letterboxd?
108.
108 from Josh.
112.
112 from Garrett. Guys, I'm very happy to say that on the big scoreboard, we're all tied up because Garrett is your winner this week. The fan number is 111. You were both very close.
Man.
Garrett missed it by just 1. A big win for Garrett this week. The Letterboxd game is his, and you get to run the game next week.
Baby circles. That's exciting.
So that ties us all up on the big charts.
Thank God.
So all up at 4.
What is everyone else's? What are you guys going to score it as?
It's a 4.5 for me.
It's
definitely practically perfect. I love it.
Yeah, it's definitely a 4.
I'm gonna match the 4.5. I think.
Cool.
Oh, y'all are gonna hate me.
That's fine.
I apologize. I genuinely do chalk it up to the fact that I haven't seen the show. I think that is a heavy hitter in this particular case because I did find the movie good, but I'm only gonna go with a 3. I think that's
better than Generations. So.
Yeah, and it's definitely better than Generations. I think the movie was. I think it looked good. I think it was a good story. I have nothing bad to say other than the fact that I really do just feel a genuine disconnect between me and these characters. And I think that is a swing and a miss. And I'm not faulting the movies. I'm not faulting me. It's just we haven't been in the same lane at the same time. And I would like to revisit this after I've seen that show. But I think that a show or a movie like this is relying a lot on the TV show, and I haven't seen it, and I think that takes a hit.
I think that's fine. I honestly think that that's fair because I think 3 on your scale is still fairly good, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
it's above average.
For a movie that, you don't have any prior ties to still get a 3, and I think that speaks well of how well it did.
Yeah.
Cool.
My concern is that y'all said this is the best one, and I'm worried about the next 2.
Yeah, you might need
You should be worried about the next 2. Listen. If there was any point in time where you found First Contact boring, you are going to be miserable in this next one.
No.
I mean, you are gonna be unconsolable.
Yeah, I mean, now I haven't watched Insurrection since I was about 8 or 9, probably 9. So
are these next 2 worse than Generations?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
At
least the next one. I don't want to speak for Nemesis.
Nemesis isn't as bad as I think most people give it credit for. I think Insurrection is just as bad as people give it credit for.
Okay.
I will add that several of the cast members of the Next Generation series have gone on record saying that First Contact is the best movie they've worked on.
Yeah.
In the series.
Yeah.
So.
I would argue that it's in the top. I would argue that if you were to make an all-time Star Trek, like including the original series movies and the reboot series, I would make an argument that First Contact's in the top 3.
Oh, I agree.
Cool.
So.
Okay. Well, our collective average turned out to be a perfect 4. So that is a respectable
assimilated all of our averages.
Score. And we will add that to our Letterboxd account. So Many Sequels. Follow us there.
What'd you say it was again?
So Many Sequels?
No, the score.
Oh, 4. A perfect 4.
Oh, perfect 4. Okay.
Well, I guess it's not perfect because a perfect would be a 5. But
yeah.
It's a perfect 4. All 4s are perfect.
Even 4.
The most perfect 4 you ever saw.
Yeah.
All right. So that wraps up that. We'll be back next time. Now we've got our viewers all hyped up for Insurrection as well.
Yeah, they're super stoked, I'm sure.
Oh, hey, look.
I don't even think it's good enough. Like it's so boring. I don't even think we can make fun of it really. Because you're gonna go, there's really nothing wrong with that. That was just really dull.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, it's like wrestling. There's good wrestling, which is enjoyable, and bad wrestling, which is enjoyable, but boring wrestling is unwatchable.
Yeah.
That's the problem. Star Trek, like any niche fandom, is like when it's good, it's good. When it's bad, like some episodes of Voyager, it's like, this is some silly stuff. when it's boring, like, season 1 episode of Deep Space Nine, it's just, is this still on?
Oh boy.
Anyway,
All
I
right.
think we might have some fun though. We'll find a way.
We'll see. We'll be
Life
back
finds
next time with Star Trek Insurrection. Follow us online on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Just search So Many Sequels there. Subscribe on YouTube and our podcast feed, and be sure to share your favorite episodes to your friends. We have a ton that you can go back and, if we haven't covered your favorite movie yet, let us know. We may have covered your favorite movie. Just scroll back and see if maybe we did it already. So.
Mm-hmm.
We've covered a lot.
And apparently,
time.
We got a bunch of great stuff, sci-fi, but also we've done some weird stuff, done some cool stuff. And what? It's a good chance Screen Rant will be reporting on whatever we're going to do next. So just watch whatever they're doing, and that'll be what we're doing next, apparently.
Yeah. So scroll through our podcast feed, find our old episodes, and listen and share. We'll be back next time. Until then.
Anybody else want to hear my babe impressions?
No, live long and prosper.